Welcome on into the Wolverine recruiting show. Clayton Sayfie here with EJ Holland. Big show for everybody. This week we are going to talk about the aftermath of Michigan's 31-10 win over Washington when it comes to the Wolverines on the recruiting trail. So a big impact for a number of guys. So we will start there. We'll also talk about, of course, five-star defensive back Domani Jackson, currently a USC commit. Clay Helton, the head coach, was just fired on Monday, so we will discuss where things stand with him in just a moment as well, and then we'll talk about some parents and their reactions to Michigan's electric atmosphere under the lights on Saturday night against the Huskies. But, EJ, let's just start with some 2022 guys overall. Who did Michigan trend up with after a big weekend that seemed to be a huge success not only on the field but on the trail? Who are some guys that you feel a little bit better about Michigan landing than maybe you did coming in?
Yeah, we'll hone in on Domani Jackson here in the next segment, but to kind of hit on some key guys, obviously let's start with the guy in the picture, Josh Connerly, Rivals 100 offensive lineman, one of the biggest targets this cycle. Connerly is important for a couple of different reasons. One, he is the top guy on the offensive line board, and he can come in and make an early impact. He can be a premier tackle. He can slide inside and play guard. It's hard to find guys like Josh Connerly, especially, when evaluating offensive linemen, it's a little bit of a crapshoot. You're getting an athletic upside tackle body in Josh Connerly. On the flip side of the coin, this is a guy that you can take full advantage of landing from out of the Pacific Northwest. One, Washington was a big school in his recruitment. Obviously, Michigan just pounded Washington. USC was a big school in his recruitment. Obviously, USC just fired Clay Helton. So the opportunity is there for Michigan to land him. I thought they really impressed him and his father on the official visit. This was their second time on campus. They were also there for the Big House barbecue or barbecue at the Big House. But yeah, I feel like Michigan's the favorite coming out of the weekend for Josh Connerly. I actually put in a pick with a little bit of a lower confidence before the visit, and now my confidence has only gone up, especially since they knocked it out of the park on the weekend. And like I said, it was Washington that they beat. USC fired Clay Helton, so it was kind of the perfect storm with Josh Connerly. So I'm feeling pretty good about Michigan's chances
And
to pull
and
it out of the Pacific Northwest.
yeah, and for an offensive lineman, I mean, to be there on the field before the game, have a pretty good seat during the game, and see a team rush for 343 yards can't hurt either. Obviously, we talked to several offensive linemen here after the game, and they all were loving that. Current offensive linemen on Michigan's team, I'm sure some prospective ones loved what they saw as well.
Yeah, I mean, Josh had that quote that I just tweeted out not too long ago where he said, I've never seen anyone run on Washington like that ever, in all caps. And I think he was just super impressed with the offensive line play. And actually, I went out to Rainier Beach to watch Connerly play a couple of weeks ago, and his offense resembles Michigan a little bit. So I'm sure he made kind of that comparison and really saw himself fitting into what the offensive line does, especially under Coach Moore, who's done a fantastic job of not only coaching the offensive linemen, but also building a relationship with Josh Connerly here in his first year as the position coach. But outside Josh Connerly, some of the other guys we want to hit on. The guy behind him in that photo is actually Dane Key, four-star wide receiver out of Kentucky. Now, we haven't talked a lot about Dane Key, but Michigan has quietly gotten him on campus twice over the last 3 months. Michigan's still pushing hard for another wide receiver this cycle. And I think Michigan, again, is quietly in a good spot with Dane Key. So that's definitely a recruit to watch. On the defensive side of the ball, they had multiple big-time visitors. Like I said, we'll get into Domani Jackson here in a little bit. But Walter Nolan, we obviously have to talk about him. We've mentioned it a lot with Walter. It's going to come down to NIL. But overall, I felt like the visit went as good as it could have gone. They had his mom on campus. His mom really loves Michigan. She has family in Detroit. They actually spent the entire weekend out there. So I know the visit went really well because I actually talked to Walter's mom. So, I'll mention that a little bit later in the show. But I think that they made a positive impact with Walter. Whether they're going to land Walter, whether they've moved back into the top three, we'll see. But I think the visit was very well ran for Nolan's entire family. Remember, he had his little brothers on campus as well. Lander Barton was really, really impressed with the defense. One of the reasons Lander Barton, 4-star linebacker out of Utah, one of the biggest reasons Lander has been really interested in Michigan is because of Mike McDonald's scheme pitch. And Lander feels like he would be a great fit in that 3-4 scheme as kind of a versatile, multifaceted linebacker. And I thought Michigan's defensive performance obviously helped. When I asked Lander for a quick quote, his response was immediately dominant defense. And that's what he wanted to see. Both of Lander's parents, who are Utah grads, Utah considered the favorite here, were on campus with him. I saw them a little bit while I was down on the sidelines before the game, and they seem to be really enjoying themselves. I think if they can overcome that legacy tie, Michigan has a legit chance here with Lander Barton. Looking at the defensive line, I mean, I had a cool picture with the two mammoths, Kenneth Grant and Deion Walker. They were actually hanging out with each other on the sideline a little bit, and it was just kind of cool to see.
I wish we had it for this. I'm sorry to the people.
It's just cool to see. It was tough to get photos on the sideline, so it's a weird angle. You can't tell how massive they are, but it's just cool that they were hanging out together. But I mean, Kenneth Grant is absolutely huge. Actually, so the big Seattle group was out there, and I was talking to one of their, leaders of the tour group, and he was like, "Hey, that Kenneth Grant kid? He is massive." And I was like, "Yeah, he is. He's all of 6'5", 340 pounds, and Deion Walker may be a little taller, but I don't know. They're both pretty comparable when it comes to their weight." But anyway, both of those guys were on campus. Really enjoyed their time on campus. I think Michigan is in a really good spot to land Kenneth Grant. I think the Ohio State loss kind of hurt them a little bit, especially with some buzz around Ohio State's defensive coaching staff. It looks like there could be some movement there. I think a lot of what happened this weekend was really positive for Michigan. Not only did you have USC fire Clay Helton, but you also had Ohio State lose. You also had Notre Dame in a tight one with Toledo. So in Kenneth's particular case, I think that Ohio State buzz around their defensive staff, negative buzz, might help Michigan here. And I thought the visit went great for Ken. I think he's going to take the next week or two to kind of back away from interviews and really just kind of take it all in and see what he wants to do. I know Kenneth would rather decide sooner rather than later. And with Deion, I think this was another added push for him to finally pull the trigger. I think, he does want to see Alabama since they came in with an offer and it's Alabama. But at the end of the day, I feel like he still wants a reason to stay close to home. And I feel like Michigan is giving him that reason. I think both Ken and Deion saw what the defense can be and how they can fit in and how both of them are perfect fits to come in and make immediate impacts in that new 3-4 scheme. Michigan doesn't have a lot of body types like Kenneth Grant and Deion Walker, and I think that's why the new scheme is so appealing to both. And then on the back end, you had quite a few targets. It wasn't just, the Domani Jackson show. You also had Amarion Walker, Notre Dame commit, who actually can play safety or wide receiver. He has the option to play both. But Ron Bellamy really leading the charge in that recruitment with Amarion. And I feel like there is a possibility that Michigan can flip him from Notre Dame, especially given the fact that Bellamy is a fellow Louisiana native and played for his high school head coach. So, and again, Notre Dame had a tight one with Toledo, that had a tight one with Florida State to open up. Michigan really, really impressed, not only with their play on the field, but with the atmosphere in general. So I think Amarion Walker is definitely one to watch. Jaden Osbury, another Louisiana native. Bellamy, again, making him a priority at the safety position. I feel like he's another guy that Michigan can maybe pull out of the South if they continue to win. And then Damani Dent, a sleeper late riser from the Jacksonville area. Michigan has obviously had success in Jacksonville, this cycle, landing Micah Pollard. George Hilo has a lot of ties there. I think Michigan pulled even and might even have a slight edge over Oregon in the recruitment of Domani Dent, who is set to make a decision on October 10th. And it would be hard for me not to mention Joshua Josephs. I've actually been exchanging messages with him for most of the morning. Edge rusher from Georgia has been Michigan's top edge rusher target for a long time. I think he was extremely impressed with the way the Michigan defense played. And this was his second time on campus. He actually made an official visit in the summer. So this one was an unofficial visit. And I think Michigan's trending in the right direction for Joshua Joseph. So that's kind of a rundown of all the major 2022 targets that were on campus. I think Michigan did everything the right way, not only with the win, but with the atmosphere, with the way the visits were handled. So I thought everything was A+ this weekend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as Jim Harbaugh said Monday, if it were a show, displaying and showcasing the University of Michigan, it couldn't have gone any better in terms of the atmosphere, the way the team played, and all of that. And the fact that there were many people watching that show from up close, like we mentioned with all these targets. Let's talk about Domani Jackson. It's kind of why probably a lot of people are still watching at this point. And it's huge, the weekend that Michigan had, and you kind of alluded to it, but he's on campus already. That was a massive development in and of itself. By the time he gets home, or soon after he got home, Clay Helton is no longer the head coach at USC, where he's committed. He obviously enjoyed his visit. He got to hang out with Will Johnson there, Michigan's 5-star defensive back commit. So they'd be able to play together. Obviously, that's a big draw as well. So, EJ, tell us why, or I guess how the visit went for Domani Jackson and why Michigan has a better shot than it did 48 hours ago or a few days ago. And then also for the viewers out there, please like this video if you want Domani Jackson to come to Michigan. That will help pump the numbers up, and give us a subscribe as well. If you want Domani Jackson to come to Michigan. If you don't want Domani Jackson to come to Michigan, then don't like this video and do not subscribe. So we'll leave it at that. So, EJ, the floor is yours.
Domani really enjoyed his time on campus, man. I saw him down on the sideline along with both of his parents, which I think it was really big. Well, one, obviously his dad, if you follow Michigan recruiting, if you don't, or just kind of tuning in, his dad is originally from Ohio and grew up a Michigan fan. And because of that, Domani also grew up a Michigan fan. And so Michigan has been his dream school since he was a little kid. But I think his winning over his mom was really important. She didn't come the last time they were in Ann Arbor, so getting her on campus, getting her to experience the atmosphere, getting her to really take a deep dive into the academic part as well, I think really moved the needle there. I think both of Domani's parents are now on board with the idea of him potentially leaving Southern California. And basically all of Domani's family is in the Midwest still. So he still has connections from a family perspective. And I think both of his parents, again, are on board with him potentially leaving. You see Domani pictured there with Will Johnson. I mean, that's kind of become like family a little bit. Will and Domani spent almost the entire offseason together. Will went out and visited USC and spent some time over at Domani's house along with his parents. They played 7-on-7 together on a couple of different occasions. I mean, they've just been really, really close and developed a really strong friendship. And they really had a special moment on Sunday that I talked to Will that night. And Will told me we were walking around the field and in the big house and kind of just looked at each other and said, this is our dream. We can live out our dream. And I know that both of those guys would really love to play with each other. I mean, high-level talent wants to play with high-level talent, and I think they would be a dynamic duo. And so with how great the visit went, you couple that with the fact that USC just fired Clay Helton, and that's a recipe for success. I don't think it could have come at a better time for Michigan. I mean, timing was great. I texted Will right when it happened, and I was like, Clay Helton just got fired at USC. And he immediately responded. He's like, already on the phone with Domani. So it was just great timing. But I think that, that gives Domani Jackson even more reason to look Michigan's way. He does have a really good relationship with interim head coach Dante Williams, but I don't think that, Dante I don't think Dante is necessarily the permanent answer there. He's just the interim coach. There's no guarantee that he stays around USC. I think Domani maybe wants to see how things play out at USC, just because it is his current hometown school, because his high school Mater Dei has sent a lot of guys to USC, and he has a lot of friends there and a lot of former teammates. But at the end of the day, I think Michigan checks all the boxes for him. It's just mostly about whether Domani really does want to leave Southern California. But I think Michigan and Will have done more than enough with Domani Jackson and his family.
So there you go. Michigan trending up, obviously, in that recruitment as well. He gets his own segment, so he wasn't even part of the, group beforehand. You talked to a number of family members of these guys that have been on campus over the last few days. What is your vibe coming out of those conversations? What are some of the biggest things that they were impressed with when you talk about parents of these guys? Because you mentioned it a few times with a few different commits just in the last 10 minutes about how mom needs to be on board. Specifically with Domani Jackson, or so and so's dad was impressed. I guess what are some of the things they've been most impressed with, and just how good of a job did Michigan do, not only with these kids, but with their parents? Because as we know, that's a huge factor too.
I spent a few minutes with really talking with Josh Connerly's dad on the sideline in the big house right before the game started. And, he thanked me for going out to Seattle and seeing Josh a couple of different times. I've been out there. I was out there for the satellite camp, obviously out there for the game. And then he just kind of talked about how great of a time they were having at Michigan, how just the atmosphere was great, the general vibe of Ann Arbor, just, the staff and how they were putting on the visit. And I just think every parent kind of shared those similar feelings. Every parent I talked to talked about how well structured the visit was, which I think, you can give credit to the new recruiting department with Courtney Morgan and Christina DeRuiter. Those names were brought up frequently by the parents. On top of that, just the game day atmosphere around Ann Arbor, not necessarily in the big house, but just, for me, it was my first time really out there, and just seeing the tailgates, just how decked out the city was, how much pride there is in the University of Michigan that you might not get out, where Josh Connerly's from. You might not get that out of, the Seattle area where Washington is, and definitely don't get that out in LA for USC. There are so many other things going on. In Ann Arbor, Michigan is the show. And I think a lot of parents were impressed with just Ann Arbor and the fan base. And then on top of that, just the atmosphere in the stadium, the crowd, the maze out. A lot of parents actually mentioned the 9/11 tribute and the halftime show, and just the whole spectacle that was the big house that night. Even like I said, it was my first time out there too, even being down on the field with those recruits. And right before the game started, when all the students kind of chanted in unison, "The best university in the world," like that was like just crazy to see. And I know a lot of recruits were just like, wow. And their families were too. And then on top of that, you couple in that the team won big, but also for a lot of these parents, they take academics very seriously, whereas, the kids might not invest too much time into that. Some do, some don't, but I think all the parents really want to learn more about the academics. And I think with Michigan, the university itself, the academics are kind of unmatched there when they're looking at other options. So the coaching staff did a great job. The academic advisors did a great job. The fans did a great job. Man, the student section they knew all these guys by name. I was like, how do you guys even know all these recruits? Like, they were picking them out and yelling Josh or Domani or Dante or Will. Like,
they do have lanyards on, but maybe they weren't that close.
No, it was hard there's no way they could see the name on the lanyard. So it was just crazy that they were just kind of yelling like 30 rows up. like, for these guys. So I think just the atmosphere in general really impressed all the recruits and their families. Again, I think it was an A+ weekend.
Anything else from the weekend that stood out to you?
I mean, I think I pretty much hit on everything. I really do think it was just a special feeling. It's kind of like one of those things where like you had to be there. I know you were in the press box and even got a little bit, but being on the field was just like different than being on the press box. And I think it was kind of like a little bit of like a magical like place down on the field. And I think the recruits were just in awe of everything going on from that kind of perspective and viewpoint. So I thought it couldn't have really gone better.
So, yeah, humble brag that you were on the field and I was up in the press box. But you did join us for the game up in the press box. So, yeah, and that was the first thing I asked you was, like, what was it like down there? And, because it looked electric. And we get to witness the atmosphere. But being on the field, is a whole different beast. And obviously was cool for you. I can't imagine for a kid that wants to be convinced that this is going to be their future home, what it did for them as well. So stay tuned at thewolverine.com. EJ mentioned and referenced a number of conversations he's had over the last couple days since this weekend concluded. Coverage from all of those will be up at thewolverine.com. So join us over there. And just a last reminder to like this video if you want Domani Jackson to come to Michigan. If not, then don't like it and don't subscribe to us here on this YouTube channel. So we appreciate everybody. It's a big help. And check us out at thewolverine.com.